My name is Melissa Johnson. I recently finished my PhD in botany, so study of plants. I'm the head researcher for the coffee berry borer area-wide project. So what we're doing is monitoring farms on the Kona and Kau sides of the island. The coffee grown in these regions is world-renowned for its high quality. It has very high prices to go along with that quality. So it's an economically very important crop in Hawaii. And in 2010, we first started to see signs that we had coffee berry borer on the coffee farms here. It's the most serious insect pest of coffee worldwide. And previous to 2010, we were one of only 3 places that did not have coffee berry borer. And so this was a serious problem for all of the farmers here. They didn't know how to deal with it and didn't know what their steps should be. Where it wasn't being managed, people were losing, half of their crop or more. We have already seen a number of people that have abandoned their coffee fields because it was just too difficult and too much money was required to keep these coffee fields in production. So in Hawaii, to manage coffee berry borer, there's a fungus, a natural enemy of the coffee berry borer, Beauveria bassiana. It's a fungus that will attack and infect coffee berry borer and kill it. But the trouble with that is that it's only effective when the beetle is first starting to bore into the berry, and it can only be, a matter of hours for it to get into the berry. And once it's in the berry, you won't see the coffee berry borer again. It completes its entire life cycle inside of the bean. And it has a very interesting life history, this beetle. The females are the ones that bore into the bean, and they create little galleries that they bore through the bean, the coffee bean, and that bean is destroyed when the female burrows in there, and she lays her eggs, which develop into pupae and eventually into small beetles. The brother and sister beetles inside the bean actually mate, and then the males die, and the females continue to develop until they're ready to leave the berry, and they will leave the berry and then find their own new berry to infest, and the process will start all over again. So this life history that is very complicated and happens all inside the coffee berry is part of what makes it so difficult to control this pest. You have just a very limited amount of time that you can actually kill the insect before it gets into the berry. So we are working on developing different methods to monitor the severity of the problem in different areas of the coffee growing regions in Hawaii. And the monitoring is really important because it tells us what the movement patterns of the beetle are. Is it at certain times of the year? We have weather stations set up so we can monitor different climate variables and see if there are any correlations with particularly high infestation rates. We are also doing damage assessments of berries on all of these different farms to estimate infestation rates. And we are also monitoring sprays of the Beauveria bassiana fungus to see how effective those sprays are in managing coffee berry borer numbers. Coffee in particular is a difficult crop to grow, not only because of, water needs and fertilizer needs and all of these other different things, but it requires, at least in Hawaii, a person to pick each of the right berries off of the tree. So it's very labor intensive, whereas other places it might be mechanized pickers. So like a tractor that comes through with claws that pulls the berries off of the tree. Everything in Hawaii is hand-picked, and so there is a connection to the land that a lot of local people have here. They have pride for what they do and pride, in the product that can only be found here. So there's a really important people aspect to coffee, which you might not realize when you have your cup of coffee in the morning, is that it's very labor intensive. It requires a lot of income. So if you don't have a lot of money to put into it at the start, it can be almost impossible to get going. And then you have to have constant income coming in, and you have to be able to find enough people to pick the berries for you. Those are some of the challenges that we face, in addition to coffee berry borer, which has brought a whole nother level of difficulties to growing a delicious coffee. So all of these different things together, I think, make coffee a really interesting and a difficult crop to really understand and wrap your head around. My journey in science has been very long and convoluted. And while I grew up on the Big Island of Hawaii, I've lived here since I was 2. In high school, I actually did not excel in science at all. I got a D in high school biology. I was also very afraid of math. I was not naturally good at math. I worked pretty hard at it, so I did okay, but none of that ever came easy for me. I always had to work really hard to get decent grades. The only exposure I really had to scientists were maybe, in your high school lab chemistry class or something. You watch a video and there's a guy in a white lab coat, usually a white guy in a white lab coat, and he's making all these complex chemical solutions, and it just seemed really inaccessible to the average person, I think, especially as a student that came from kind of a low-income background and was going to a low-income public school. There weren't really women in science, so I can't ever recall seeing a woman take that strong science role and being really smart and knowing about all of these different things. So I think that was really intimidating for me when I first started. So having a professor that was a woman and someone that I could relate to and someone that was willing to share her personal challenges with me really helped me to see that I could do what she was doing and I could be a scientist and it could be a viable career option for me. So take different kinds of courses. I think that's really important because it's really hard to know from the beginning what your main interests will be in until you take a course in it. And if you're not interested in just the general background of the subject, it would be really hard to make a career out of it. So also, I think go for any kind of volunteer and internship opportunity that becomes available to you. That's something that I wish I had done from early on, because if you build all of those different types of skills, like skills in the lab, in the field, people communication skills, writing skills are really important. All of those types of things, they'll transfer into any type of career that you decide to go for. So I think just building as many different kinds of skills as you can is probably the most important thing that you can do as an undergraduate. Also, I think just learning to not be afraid of not knowing what you're doing, and math and science skills didn't come easily to me. I had to work really, really hard to get any kind of a foundation. So I think, just apply yourself and realize that those are subjects that everyone struggles with, even if they're not showing it, they're difficult. I think that for all of us, we could all use some extra help in. So not being afraid to look for different kinds of resources.
Awesome.
Yeah.